Gu Linzhou is rushed to the ER in the middle of the night, sweating bullets from acute appendicitis. Through the painful haze, he suddenly hears a super calm, weirdly familiar voice. A tall doctor walks in holding a medical chart, eyes scanning him from over a surgical mask. The doctor doesn't seem to recognize him at first, but Gu Linzhou knows him instantly. It is Shen Zhiheng, his ex-boyfriend. Bro, talk about the worst timing ever. The gurney wheels clatter loudly, rolling him down the sterile, brightly lit hospital corridors. The blinding fluorescent lights overhead pass by in a dizzying blur. It stings. He can barely open his eyes as he clutches his side. It feels like a dull knife is slowly twisting inside him, over and over. The pain has him completely curled up, his back drenched in a cold sweat. A nurse asks him some questions, but her voice sounds miles away. She gently asks if his name is Gu Linzhou, and he barely manages a weak nod. When she asks if he's 28, he groans out another faint response. Where does it hurt the most? She presses. He weakly points to his lower right side, his voice completely hoarse. It is a sharp, throbbing pain, he wheezes as she takes notes. She lifts his shirt and presses. The second her hand touches him, he nearly leaps off the bed. Gasping in pure agony, he hears her ask how long it has been hurting. It started tonight, he mumbles, and it just keeps getting worse. He gets wheeled into a small treatment bay, separated only by a thin curtain. The sharp smell of hospital disinfectant fills his nose, triggering an instant wave of anxiety. Staring up at the white ceiling, his mind goes totally numb from the agonizing pain. At this point, he just wants any doctor to show up and give him a painkiller. Or even drag him into surgery. Suddenly, footsteps approach, and the curtain is swept open. The first thing he sees is a pair of white leather shoes, slightly dusty. Then a long, pristine lab coat on a remarkably tall, slender frame. The doctor looks down at the clipboard, his posture cool and professional. His voice is completely flat, no emotion whatsoever. He asks quietly if he is Gu Linzhou, and our main character weakly groans in response. But wait, why does that voice sound so shockingly familiar? He snaps his eyes open. The doctor is wearing a blue surgical mask. It covers most of his face, leaving only a pair of focused eyes and a smooth forehead. A few stray hairs are tucked behind his ear as he keeps his gaze locked on the chart. His long eyelashes cast soft shadows, and then he finally looks up. His gaze is entirely cold and professional, treating Gu Linzhou like any other random patient. He sweeps his eyes over his face for just 1 or 2 seconds. He suddenly freezes, his eyelashes flutter in brief shock. A tiny flicker of disbelief passes through his eyes, so fast it almost feels like a hallucination. But there's no mistake, they both recognized each other, and the air instantly turns to ice. The only sounds are Gu Linzhou's heavy, ragged breathing and the faint rustle of paper. He tries to speak. Nothing comes out. His throat is bone dry. He cannot say a single word. How on earth is it him, his ex-boyfriend Shen Zhiheng? Honestly, meeting his ex like this in the middle of a medical emergency is actually crazy. It has been 4 years since their breakup. Shen Zhiheng is the first to look away. He looks back down at the chart, his voice instantly returning to that icy professional tone. He asks her even more coldly now if the pain in her lower right abdomen is getting worse. She just stares at his eyes above the mask, so familiar yet so incredibly distant now. After she barely manages to nod, he steps up without another word and tells her to lift her shirt. She pulls the hospital gown up to her chest, shivers slightly, and realizes his hands are actually freezing. He presses down on her stomach, starting with the spots that do not hurt as much first. How does this feel? He asks softly, but she just grits her teeth and tells him no. No pain there, but then his fingers slowly slide right over to McBurney's point on her lower right side. He gives it a gentle press, and her entire body instantly tenses up with a jolt. She gasps for air as cold sweat starts pouring down her forehead. Is this where the pain is the worst? He asks calmly, and she wheezes out a desperate yes. Right there, he lets go immediately and steps off to the side. He grabs some hand sanitizer from the wall, rubs his hands together, and calmly drops the diagnosis. It looks like acute appendicitis, so they will need a blood test and an abdominal CT scan to confirm. As he speaks, his pen is flying across the medical chart, scribbling notes down. His messy, hurried handwriting is completely unrecognizable compared to the neat print she remembers. It is just not him anymore. Suddenly, he presses the call button on the wall. A nurse rushes in and he immediately gives her instructions to take care of the patient. Go get some blood work done for, then contact radiology for an emergency abdominal CT scan. The nurse nods right away, calling him Doctor Shen as she gets to work. She comes over to adjust the bed, getting ready to wheel our girl out of the room. But lying on that gurney, she cannot tear her eyes away from Shen Zhiheng. Still, he does not look back once, just keeping his eyes glued to his computer screen, typing away. His profile looks so cold in the screen light as she is finally wheeled out for tests. Honestly, when the needle goes into her vein, she does not even feel the sting. Her head is completely filled with the image of his eyes, so cold and professional. There was barely a flicker of emotion in them, plus he has clearly lost weight. That soft baby fat she remembers on his cheeks is completely gone now. Even with the mask on, his jawline looks way sharper and more defined than before. He really made it as an emergency doctor in this busy city hospital. Talk about a crazy plot twist. The world is so tiny she gets appendicitis and lands right in his ward. After her scan is done, she gets wheeled right back to her emergency room cubicle. Time drags on forever while she waits for the results, waves of sharp pain still hitting her stomach. Somehow, the pain feels slightly more bearable now, probably because her mind is completely distracted. Outside the curtain, she hears hurried footsteps and watches the blurry shadows of other patients passing by. Doctors and nurses are talking fast, and she strains her ears, trying to catch his voice in the noise. Maybe she hears him, maybe she does not. After about 20 minutes, the waiting finally ends. The curtain slides open, and there he is again, holding a file in his hands. He has got her blood test and CT scan results, scanning them with a serious look. His eyebrows knit together as he speaks quietly, telling her that her white blood cell count is extremely high. The CT scan shows her appendix is severely swollen with fluid starting to build up around it. It is definitely acute appendicitis, and she needs surgery right away. He finally looks up to meet her eyes, asking in a completely professional tone if she has any family there. They need someone to sign the paperwork, but she just shakes her head. Her voice is incredibly raspy as she explains she lives completely alone and her friends cannot make it in time. He freezes for a second, and a tiny flash of hesitation slips through his cold gaze. Instead of waiting, Dr. Shen says he can just sign it himself. He rapidly explains the risks of the upcoming surgery in a super fast, totally detached tone, reading off a massive list of potential complications. Our guy hears words like infections and adhesions, but nothing really registers. He just stares blankly. The doctor finally finishes. Shen caps the pen, hands over the form, and points where to sign. He takes the pen. His hand is shaking. Whether it is from intense pain or sheer panic, he signs his name anyway. His signature is a crooked mess. Shen takes the paper and glances at it. He calmly tells the nurse to start pre-op prep, including the dreaded gastric tube and catheter. They will go up when the room is ready. Then he turns to leave. But our main character instinctively calls out to him, "Dr. Shen!" He stops. He half turns, looking back silently. Our guy completely freezes. Honestly, what do you even ask your ex in this situation? That is way too awkward. Instead, he hesitantly asks if Dr. Shen is performing the surgery. Sean calmly says no. He is just the ER doctor on duty tonight. A surgeon will be handling the operation. Our guy just softly mumbles a reply. In his heart, he really does not know if he is relieved or just incredibly disappointed by that. Shen tells him to rest, then walks out. His silhouette vanishes into the chaotic ER. Right after, the nurse begins the prep work. The gastric tube makes him gag like crazy, and the catheter is absolute torture. After all that agonizing prep, he finally looks and feels like a real patient. Completely paralyzed on the bed, unable to move. His stomach is still throbbing, but knowing the surgery is happening brings some peace. He stares up at the harsh, pale ceiling lights. His head spins. Now we finally get to see how they first met. Right by the library window. Around 4 or 5 in the afternoon, golden sunlight was framing his face. He was deeply focused on reading a massive, incredibly thick medical textbook. Probably anatomy. Next to him was a simple white thermos. Back then, our main character was pretty shameless and sat right down to flirt. Is this free? Shen just looked up. He shook his head and went back to reading with clear, quiet eyes. He had this scholarly vibe. Our guy was completely distracted. His eyes were glued to Shen, trying to strike up a conversation about majors. Shen did not say much, but he was incredibly polite. He was a second-year clinical medicine student. Our guy boasted he was in computer science. Saying he was a junior and his senior, Shen just smiled without saying anything. After that, he practically camped out there daily until they finally got a bit closer. He learned his name was Shen Zhiheng, a pretty unique name. It sounded so classic. Shen studied relentlessly, aiming for this incredibly prestigious medical school. Specifically, its affiliated hospital. He also learned Shen only drank warm water. There were always goji berries in his thermos. It took half a year of chasing before they started dating. Those days were seriously the best, pulling all-nighters together in that library. Zhiheng would play games to help Linzhou unwind, and Linzhou would take him out for street food. Even while complaining about how unhealthy those street snacks were, he still ate them happily. Zhiheng was quiet but incredibly stubborn. Once his mind was set, 10 bulls couldn't pull him back. Linzhou was free-spirited and loved to play, but he always behaved himself whenever Zhiheng was around. They stayed together for 3 years, starting from college to when Linzhou had just started working for about a year, and then they suddenly broke up. Honestly, there was no crazy drama. Linzhou was just too young and unstable back then. His heavy work stress made his temper short, while Zhiheng had a brutal academic load. With Zhiheng busy with his residency, the time they spent together dwindled to almost nothing. They would fight over the smallest things. Zhiheng felt that Linzhou lacked ambition and had no real future plans, while Linzhou thought he was just way too controlling. The pressure was suffocating, leading to an absolutely brutal final fight between them. Linzhou can't even remember the details of that fight, only Zhiheng's quiet, steady voice saying, "Gu Linzhou, maybe we're really just not right for each other." In a fit of rage, Linzhou snapped back. "If we're not right, let's not force it." And just like that, they actually stopped trying. Zhiheng deleted all his contact info, and out of spite, Linzhou never reached out to him again. He changed his job, moved away, and deliberately avoided any news about his former love. 4 years passed, and boom, we get the ultimate angsty reunion trope. Linzhou was the patient lying on the emergency room gurney, crying out in absolute agony, while Zhiheng was his attending doctor, calmly declaring that he needed immediate surgery. Talk about insane timing. Soon after, the curtain pulled back again, and a male doctor walked in alongside a nurse. The doctor spoke up, asking if he was Gu Linzhou, introducing himself as Dr. Zhao from surgery. He was there to take him to the operating room, and Linzhou weakly nodded. The nurse stepped over to check his IV lines before teaming up with Dr. Zhao. They began pushing his hospital bed out, the wheels clattering loudly against the floor. As they wheeled him past the nurse's station, Linzhou instinctively turned his head to look. Zhiheng was standing inside the station with his back turned, giving instructions to a nurse. He didn't turn around as Linzhou was rolled into the dedicated surgical elevator. As the elevator rose with a slight weightless drift, they stopped right outside the operating room. The anesthesiologist approached to verify his info, asking a series of questions about allergies. He asked about prior surgeries too. Linzhou answered them all before being wheeled inside. The room was freezing cold, with medical monitors blinking under bright lights. Several staff members surrounded Linzhou and carefully moved him onto the narrow operating table. The anesthesiologist connected the monitors, and his blood pressure and heart rate started beeping. In a calm voice, the anesthesiologist informed him that they were administering the anesthetic now. It might feel a bit tight entering the IV line. Suddenly, ice-cold fluid rushed through his veins. The doctor then instructed him to start counting backward from 10. Taking a deep breath, Linzhou softly muttered, 10, 9. And then he lost consciousness, slipping into what felt like an endless dream. The dream was a chaotic blur, flashing back to their college campus. He saw their painful arguments, and Zhiheng staring right into his eyes. Finally, everything faded into a blank void. By the time Linzhou woke up, he was in the recovery room, his throat burning like absolute fire. Trying to speak proved useless as no sound came out. Seeing him stir, a nurse walked over. She softly asked if he was awake and what his name was. Linzhou struggled to squeeze out a whisper. Gu Linzhou gives a raspy reply, and the nurse asks if he knows where he is. He weakly whispers the hospital, and the nurse gently tells him the surgery is over. She says it went perfectly and he'll be moved soon. Gu Linzhou just blinks. The harsh light hurts, and his brain is still totally foggy from the anesthesia. Opening his mouth stings, but the agonizing appendicitis pain, totally gone. Soon, he is wheeled into a shared 3-bed recovery room. The nurse gives him some quick reminders. Lie flat for 6 hours, no water. He just mumbles in agreement. He has 0 strength. Suddenly, his close friend Dao Zhou rushes in. Dao Zhou looks panicked, total panic. He asks if Gu is okay, saying the news scared him to death. Hearing about the emergency appendicitis surgery, Gu Linzhou just smiles weakly. He whispers that he won't die, but Dao Zhou demands answers. Gu Linzhou explains the pain started last night, but he ignored it. When it got unbearable, he called an ambulance. Dao Zhou tucks him in. Dao Zhou sighs in relief, glad his friend is actually okay. What did the doctor say? Gu Linzhou replies he just needs to lie flat. Suddenly, Dao Zhou lowers his voice. He saw a familiar doctor at the station. Honestly, he looked exactly like Gu Linzhou's ex-boyfriend. Dao Zhou struggles with the name. Gu Linzhou's heart completely drops. He blurts out, Shen Zhiheng. Dao Zhou excitedly confirms that is the guy. Is he working here? How is his ex at this exact hospital? Gu Linzhou closes his eyes, whispering that his ex admitted him. Dao Zhou is totally shocked. No shot. Did you two actually talk? Gu Linzhou calmly replies they only spoke as doctor and patient. Deju calls it pure drama. But was it awkward? Gu Linzhou acts completely indifferent. After all, the guy's a professional. But deep down, it hurts. Those professional words leave a bitter sting. That cold, professional distance made him feel like an absolute stranger. 4 years have passed. Expecting lingering feelings is just wishful thinking. All he can actually rely on is his ex's medical ethics. And to be fair, Shen Zhiheng performed the surgery flawlessly. Still, lying flat for 6 hours with a dry throat is torture. Eventually, Dao Zhou leaves for work, promising to return tonight. Left completely alone, Gu Linzhou stares at the ceiling as the anesthesia fades. Waves of sharp pain hit his incision until the nurse hooks up medication. The pain eases slightly, but sleep? Out of the question. Closing his eyes only brings back memories of Shen Zhiheng's cold fingers. By evening, the nurse returns to check his vitals. He softly asks if the doctor will do rounds tonight. Since his attending is Dr. Zhao, he hesitantly asks about Dr. Shen. The nurse explains that Dr. Shen is likely off duty by now. Emergency shifts are on rotation. Gu Linzhou quietly sighs. His chest feels incredibly empty, realizing his ex went home to rest. Right on cue, his actual attending, Dr. Zhao, walks in. The doctor checks his wound and says it's healing up nicely. He can try getting out of bed tomorrow, so he says thanks. That night, his friend Dao Zhou brings him some light porridge, but he has no appetite. After just 2 bites, he sets it down, watching the other patients surrounded by family. It makes his side of the room feel extra lonely as he mindlessly scrolls his phone. He can't focus on anything, his mind helplessly drifting back to the past. He remembers when he once had a burning fever of over 39 degrees. Shen Zhiheng skipped her classes that day, rushing over to his tiny rented apartment to nurse him. She cooled his forehead, feeding him medicine. Shivering and completely out of it, he desperately held her hand. She stayed by his side the entire night until his fever finally broke. When he woke up, she was asleep nearby. Back then, he was sure she was the one. Man, this is low-key heartbreaking. He tosses his phone aside with a heavy sigh. What's even the point? It's all in the past. Besides, the way she looks at him now, it's like he's just an object. The pain keeps him awake in the noisy ward. Next morning, the nurse draws blood. If his levels are fine, they can remove the catheter. He desperately wants to walk, secretly hoping to run into her. Even though the hospital is massive. She works in emergency and he is up in surgery. But still, what if? Around 9 a.m., the caregiver helps him freshen up. Clean clothes make him feel much better. Just as he's about to ring the nurse, the curtain rustles. Someone is standing there, backlit. He recognizes that silhouette instantly.
It's Shen Zhiheng.
She is wearing a gray sweater and jeans, hair tied back. No doctor's coat. No mask. She looks thinner. Her jawline is sharper. Her bare face is pale, looking incredibly exhausted. Fresh off a night shift. She just stares, her eyes filled with complex emotions. She's not cold, but she's not warm either. He froze. His heart starts racing like crazy. Stuttering, he asks how she got here. She steps in calmly, explaining she just finished work. Her voice is softer than last night, but still so distant. He murmurs a quick thanks. She asks how he's feeling. Does it hurt? He says it is fine. He has the pain pump. She asks if he has passed gas. He awkwardly admits he hasn't. She softly reminds him he needs to before eating anything. Just two former lovers awkwardly struggling to find words. A heavy silence falls as his eyes slowly sweep over her. Glancing from the bedside monitor back to her face, he finally breaks the silence to ask if she is all alone. She gives a stiff, quiet nod, telling him she has to get ready for work. He asks if she needs any help, and after a brief hesitation, she tells him she is fine for now. Another quiet pause, and he softly tells her to get some good rest. Seeing him turn to leave, she panics and quickly calls out his name, Shen Zhiheng. He stops and looks back at her, silently waiting for her to continue. She just stares at him. It has been 4 whole years. There are so many things she wants to ask, but not a single question feels right. In the end, she can only squeeze out one line in a raspy, strained voice. She thanks him for visiting, and he merely purses his lips in response. His eyes drift away before returning to her, and he quietly murmurs that she is welcome. He pauses for a second, then softly adds that he hopes she recovers soon. Then, just like last night, he slips out of the room, his footsteps barely making a sound. She just stares at the empty space where he vanished. Seriously, the sheer angst here is insane. Her chest feels completely suffocated. He came all this way just to offer a few incredibly polite empty words. What was that even supposed to be? Just some basic medical courtesy? Or was he literally just acting like a doctor doing a routine follow-up on a patient? She cannot understand him at all, staring at the empty doorway with a quiet, burning frustration. She only snaps out of her thoughts when the nurse walks in to remove her catheter. That sensation is honestly awful, but the nurse gently tells her to try getting out of bed. It will prevent internal adhesions, but she absolutely has to take things slow. She nods, and once the nurse leaves, she slowly shuffles her way to the edge of the bed. First, she rolls up the bed to sit up, then gradually swings her legs down to the floor. Her feet feel incredibly weak, and the moment she tries pushing herself up from the bedside, the incision in her abdomen violently pulls tight, making her gasp in sharp pain. Cold sweat instantly drenches her forehead. It literally feels like her flesh is being torn open. Hunching over, she has to wait a long time before she dares to straighten up even a fraction. Clinging to the wall, she drags herself toward the door, every tiny step pulling painfully on her fresh wound. The hallway is bustling with doctors and nurses rushing past. Among the families walking by, she instinctively glances over toward the elevator lobby. There is no sign of Shen Zhiheng anymore, which makes sense. He only stopped by on his way. He left as soon as he checked on her, so why did she expect him to stay? Leaning against the wall, she paces back and forth along the corridor like a snail. By the time she finally crawls back into bed, a thin layer of sweat covers her body. It feels like she just fought a massive battle, exhausted, and yet her heart feels completely hollow. Her friend Da-jo drops by during lunch break, bringing some plain rice soup from the cafeteria. Da-jo asks with concern if she can walk yet, and she weakly whispers yes. She tells her friend she just tried walking, but the pain was absolutely brutal. Da-jo tries to comfort her, saying her recovery's actually pretty fast, though she still looks incredibly pale. She takes a small sip of the tasteless soup, hesitating for a split second. She quietly drops the news that Shen Zhiheng came by this morning, making Da-jo's eyes widen. Stunned, Da-jo asks in total disbelief, "Who, that ex-boyfriend of yours?" When asked what he said, she simply replies that he did not say much at all. Gu Linzhou just wants peace and quiet, but his buddy Da-jo is totally confused. Like, is that seriously it? Gu Linzhou nods. Yep, that is literally all. Dazhou strokes his chin, highly suspicious. He starts overthinking. Isn't it super sketchy for an ER doctor to randomly visit the surgical ward? That's not standard protocol. Honestly, Gu Linzhou is stunned because he never even considered this. He guesses his ex was probably just passing by, but Dazhou has that classic I know everything look. No way, he says. The ER and surgical ward aren't even in the same building. Definitely not on his way. Dazhou looks at his buddy dead serious that this is incredibly sus. With his head spinning, Gu Linzhou tries to defend it, telling him to stop overanalyzing things. Maybe it's just basic courtesy for a former patient, right? Dazhou just scoffs. He's completely rolling his eyes at that excuse. The hospital has hundreds of patients. Why would he go out of his way for just anyone? He goes quiet, giving Gu Linzhou this incredibly meaningful look. Then, lowering his voice, he asks if the doctor still has feelings for him. Gu Linzhou immediately panics, shutting that theory down. Absolutely no way. He argues that last night, his ex looked at him like a total stranger. But Dazhou hits back. Then how do you explain today? Gu Linzhou goes dead silent. His eyes fill with pure confusion. Honestly, he really doesn't know anymore. He could never read Shen Zhiheng back then, and after 4 long years, forget about it. Dazhou just pats his shoulder, giving him some deep, worldly advice. Since fate literally dragged them back together in such a wild way, he tells him to figure it out, then rushes off to handle some work emergency. Gu Linzhou lies there overthinking for hours, but he still can't make sense of anything. With a throbbing wound and a messy brain, he drifts off, waking up to the warm afternoon sun. The light is a bit blinding as the nurse comes in to take his temperature. She tells him he's got a mild fever, but it's just a normal post-surgery reaction. Still feeling incredibly groggy, his mind starts drifting back to the old days. He remembers their very first fight. It was over something so incredibly stupid. Gu Linzhou was too busy gaming, totally ignoring his boyfriend's texts. Shen Zhiheng got mad, feeling completely ignored and unvalued. Thinking he was totally overreacting, Gu Linzhou started a cold war that lasted for days. But eventually, he cracked, waiting outside the dorm with his ex's favorite warm milk tea. Shen Zhiheng had red eyes, and while he didn't say he forgave him, he took the drink. Then there was that rough post-grad job hunt where Gu Linzhou took his frustration out on him. Instead of fighting back, Shen Zhiheng just stood there, watching him in absolute silence. Only after the rant was over did his partner speak up, calmly addressing him by name. Asking Gu Linzhou to stop using him as a punching bag, which brought instant regret. He hugged him tight, apologizing, while Shen Zhiheng softly acknowledged his massive stress, but reminded him that they're partners, not emotional punching bags. He was always so mature and level-headed, in a way that truly broke Gu Linzhou's heart. Eventually, the arguments piled up over everything from future plans to daily life. Shen Zhiheng desperately craved stability. He wanted a clear future, but Gu Linzhou thought they had all the time in the world. He wanted to delay things, letting their hidden issues snowball bigger and bigger, until that final, devastating crash that completely shattered both of them. Post-breakup, the regrets flooded in, but he was just too young and stubborn to admit it. He could not bring himself to beg, thinking even if he tried, it would just end the same way, because they were both too stubborn back then. Neither would bend an inch for the other. 3 days passed in the hospital. His fever broke and the pain faded enough for him to walk to the bathroom. After taking a few laps around the hallway, Dr. Zhao told him his recovery was great. Just 2 more days of observation and he could finally be discharged. During those 3 days, Shen Zhiheng never showed up, which is honestly so frustrating to watch. Those unrealistic fantasies he kept holding on to were starting to fade. He realized the doctor probably just stopped by on his way out, nothing more. The afternoon before his release, he was slowly pacing around the quiet corridor. That is when he overheard 2 nurses gossiping near the station. One of the nurses whispered about how Dr. Shen looked exhausted with massive dark circles under his eyes. The other nurse agreed immediately, saying it was crazy. Apparently, he pulled an all-nighter for that massive pileup accident a few days ago. Then, he even covered half a shift for someone else the very next day, the nurse added. He is pushing way too hard. She wondered if he would collapse. The other nurse sighed, saying nobody really knew. He just felt like he was pushing himself to the absolute limit lately. The first nurse agreed, noting that although he was always dedicated,
He had never been this desperate before. Bro, my heart is literally aching for them.
why was Shen Zhiheng pushing himself so hard, he wondered, as the nurse spoke again. She praised his incredible skills and calm attitude, especially with the appendicitis patient from that night. He handled it incredibly smoothly, which made the other nurse ask a curious question.
She asked if they meant that handsome patient, Gu Linzhou, which the first nurse quickly confirmed.
Yes, him, she said, adding that Dr. Shen actually did something unusual. He apparently visited his ward specially once afterward, shocking the other nurse completely. She had no idea, because the doctor rarely visited ward patients like that. He only visited severe cases needing serious follow-up, the nurse explained. He went right after his shift the other morning, which she found really strange too. As they lowered their voices, Gu Linzhou froze right in his tracks. He leaned against the wall, pretending to look at the window, but his heart was racing like crazy. Why would he visit if he never does that? Was it truly just a coincidence? Or was Da Zhou right? His mind was spinning. Seriously, this slow burn is unmatched. That evening, Da Zhou arrived to pick him up since the paperwork was finally finished. He changed back into his normal clothes, though he still had to move very carefully. He slowly made his way to the entrance, breathing in the warm summer night air. It was a little humid, but finally breathing the outside air felt like a massive relief. He felt completely reborn as Da Zhou went to grab the car from the lot. While waiting at the entrance, he looked up and spotted a very familiar figure. Walking straight out of the emergency wing, it was Shen Zhiheng once again. He was dressed in a casual t-shirt and sweatpants, carrying a regular backpack over his shoulder. Looking absolutely exhausted, he kept his head down while typing on his phone. The doctor did not notice him, leaving Gu Linzhou hesitating for a second. But he decided to speak up anyway, softly calling out Dr. Shen's name. He looked up and froze instantly upon seeing him, his finger completely pausing on the screen. Wait, discharged already? He looks totally shocked. She finished her paperwork and he immediately asks how she is recovering. Honestly, still walking like a snail, but otherwise totally fine. So he goes into full doctor mode, telling her to rest up. Keep the wound dry, get the stitches out on time. Eat light. He still sounds like a doctor, but since they are outside the hospital, without that sterile ward vibe, the usual distance between them feels smaller. She pauses, then sincerely says okay. Thanks, Dr. Shen, and thanks for visiting me the other day. He just purses his lips, totally dodging the subject, classic male lead behavior. Staring at her pale face, he asks if anyone is picking her up. She tells him her friend is already grabbing the car. He just lets out a soft hum, followed by a brief, awkward silence. The cold night breeze hits, and honestly, he seems completely speechless. Finally, breaking the quiet, he tells her to go home and rest. Looking at the dark circles under his eyes, she tells him the same. She heard he has been working crazy hours, so he needs to stay healthy. Surprise flashes in his eyes before he quickly looks down. With a quiet murmur, he softly says he has to go. Giving her a slight nod, he turns and walks away. Walking fast, like he is running away. Watching his silhouette melt into the night, she feels this weird, indescribable emotion. Right on cue, her friend Da Zhou honks. As she gets in, Da Zhou immediately asks what she is staring at. He says that guy's back looks familiar while she buckles her seatbelt. She casually plays it cool, telling him it is nobody as they drive off. Leaning against the window, she watches the neon shitty lights flash by. The hospital fades away, and honestly, guys, this is where the real tension begins. Life at home is so boring. She's basically stuck walking like an old grandpa. Thankfully, Da Zhou drops by now and then to bring her food. Her body is healing, but her mind is still completely stuck in a loop. She literally cannot stop thinking about Dr. Shen Zhiheng. That hurried exit of his and the nurse's words about how hard he works? Why visit her? It is just buzzing in her head like crazy. Finally, the day comes to get her stitches out, so she heads back alone. She books a general slot, and the doctor happily says she is recovering well. Getting the stitches snipped hurts a tiny bit, but it is over fast. Leaving the clinic, she finds herself wandering aimlessly through the hospital hallways. And of course, she unconsciously walks right toward the emergency room. It is not as chaotic as the night shift, but still pretty busy. Watching from a safe distance, she sees the medical staff rushing back and forth. Her eyes scan the crowd, desperately hoping to catch a glimpse of him. But nothing. Maybe he is busy, or just off shift today. Standing there like a lost puppy, she realizes she is being ridiculous. Why did Linzhou even come here? What would he even say if they met? Just walk up and say a casual hi? Hey, Dr. Shen, I am here to get my stitches out and wanted to see you. Yeah, way too forced. He turned around to leave, but just as he reached the hospital lobby, his phone buzzed. Dazhou. Dazhou asked if he got his stitches out yet, and Linzhou replied, just finished. Dazhou asked how he was holding up, and Linzhou casually said he was fine. The doctor gave him the clear. Dazhou immediately told him there was a gathering tonight. He asked if Linzhou wanted to join to help shake off his recent bad luck. Our boy hesitated since the wound was still fresh. Drinking was a terrible idea, but staying home alone was low-key driving him crazy. He asked what kind of gathering, and Dazhou said it was just a few old friends. Just a quiet dinner, and if he did not feel well, he could stick to soft drinks. After a second, he agreed and told him to send over the address. He hung up. He tried to clear his head of all those messy thoughts about Shen Zhiheng. That was all in the past, and his current life was what mattered now.
The dinner was held at a quiet, private restaurant.
It really was just his old crew whom he had not seen in ages. Since everyone knew about his recent surgery, they did not pressure him to drink. They let him toast with tea, and the vibe was actually pretty great. He tried his best to blend in, laughing along as they caught up on life. But his mind wandered. He could still smell the hospital disinfectant and picture Shen Zhiheng's tired eyes. His buddy Aji nudged him, whispering for his attention. Aji asked him to guess who he saw the other day, and Linzhou played it cool, asking who. Leaning in close, Aji whispered the name, Shen Zhiheng.
He asked if he remembered his ex-girlfriend, making Linzhou's heart instantly stop.
Acting like he did not care, he asked where Aji had spotted her. Aji recalled seeing her at the coffee shop right below his office. She was dressed up formally, waiting for someone. It looked exactly like a blind date. Linzhou froze, his chopsticks stopping midair as he blurted out, a blind date? Aji nodded, saying there was a guy sitting right across from her. He was wearing a fancy suit and tie, trying to look all proper. They seemed to get along, though there was nothing super intimate going on. As Ajay kept babbling, Linzhou stayed silent, feeling a sudden heavy lump in his chest. A blind date. It has been 4 years, so it was completely normal for her to move on. Did he expect her to stay single forever? Yet he could not shake this deep, suffocating discomfort. That is when another friend chimed in. They asked why the two of them even broke up back then, saying it was a massive shame. Everyone remembered how perfect they were together. Linzhou just quietly took a sip of his tea. He forced a dry smile, brushing it off as a simple personality clash. They were just too young. His friends sighed in agreement. But now that they crossed paths again, did he really not feel anything? Linzhou kept his voice flat, trying to hide his emotions. He coldly muttered that they were strictly doctor and patient now, so there was nothing to think about. Seeing our boy really wasn't trying to talk about it, everyone quickly pivots the conversation. But honestly, his vibe is totally ruined, and his brain is just running circles around Shen Zhiheng. He literally can't stop picturing her in that cafe with another guy, wondering if she's going to smile at him. Will she give him that same shy, cute look she used to save just for him? Feeling incredibly frustrated, Gu Linzhou makes a quick excuse to head to the restroom. He steps out into the hallway, lights up a cigarette, and just stares out at the city lights. He keeps telling himself he's completely over her, but the second her name drops, he instantly loses his cool. Talk about being down bad. He's literally calling himself pathetic for still caring this much. After his smoke, he doesn't even bother staying. He makes a quick excuse and bails back home. His actual physical injuries don't even hurt anymore, but man, his heart is taking a major beating right now. Fast forward another week, and our boy is pretty much back to normal. He goes back to the office completely burying himself in his work. He tries to stay constantly busy so he won't have time to think about her. But honestly, she is literally living rent-free in his head, and his coping mechanism is failing hard.
She keeps popping into his thoughts, and before he knows it, he's working super late on Friday night.
It's almost 10 p.m. when he finally leaves the building, and his stomach is absolutely growling. He decides to hit up the lively food street right behind the office for some late-night comfort food. The place is packed with street vendors and bustling with energy. He heads over to his usual stir-fried noodle spot and places a quick order. While he's waiting, he casually looks around, and then boom, he spots someone who has absolutely no business being in a place like this. It's Shen Zhiheng, totally by herself. She's sitting on a cheap plastic stool at a nearby wonton stall. She's just quietly eating a small bowl of wontons, dressed in super casual clothes, wearing a simple beige knit sweater with her hair casually down. Her profile under the warm streetlights looks incredibly soft and gentle. This is a total 180 from the cold, professional Dr. Shen we usually see at the hospital. He is so confused because this spot is nowhere near the hospital or her actual apartment. As our boy stands there staring like a fool, she suddenly senses someone watching her. She looks up and boom, their eyes lock right across the crowded street. She instantly freezes, clearly not expecting to run into him in a place like this either. She's got half a wonton still in her mouth, with her spoon literally frozen midair. Honestly, she looks kind of adorable. He hesitates for a second, then decides to walk over. He softly says Dr. Shen, making her panic swallow her food real quick. She puts her spoon down, quickly putting her calm, professional mask back on. But the tips of her ears are turning pink as she mumbles a quick greeting. Gu Linzhou asks her if she's also getting late-night snacks, which is totally an obvious question. She tries to explain herself with a quiet, slightly embarrassed tone. She says she just got off work late and was passing by. Looking at her tiny, plain bowl of soup, he asks if that's seriously all she is eating. After she mumbles that she's not that hungry, he sits down on the stool next to her. He calls out to the noodle guy, asking if his order is ready yet. The vendor yells back that it's good to go, so he runs over to grab his plate. He walks back to her table and sits down, leaving them side by side. Just two exes sitting on cheap plastic stools by the curb, quietly eating their late-night food. The vibe is incredibly awkward, and neither of them has any idea what to say next. Around them, there is only the loud chatter of the crowd and food bubbling in the pots. He eats. The noodles taste totally bland now. His entire focus is locked on the guy next to him, who eats incredibly slowly, just taking tiny bites, looking completely out of place in this noisy food stall. Suddenly, the quiet doctor breaks the silence, softly asking if our boy eats here often. Our guy nods, saying he grabs a bite here after working late because it is pretty good. The doctor just gives a quiet nod, and the silence returns. Bro, the awkwardness is real. Remembering his friend Aji's advice, he finally musters up the courage to ask how he has been. The doctor's hand freezes midair before he calmly replies, "Same as always, just working." Our guy tentatively mentions hearing that the emergency room gets crazy busy, and the doctor agrees. It is, so our boy tells him to stay healthy, receiving a polite thank you in return. After finishing his last wonton, the quiet doctor pulls out a tissue to wipe his mouth. He gently asks if our boy's wound is fully healed, and our guy replies that it is basically fine now. Relieved, the doctor stands up and softly mentions that he is finished with his meal. He's about to head out, and for some reason, our main guy suddenly panics. Blurting out that he's almost done, he asks to walk together. He adds that finding a ride here is tough, making the doctor look over. There's a flicker of hesitation in his eyes. He doesn't say yes, but doesn't refuse. He just stands there, waiting, so our boy quickly shoves the remaining noodles down. He wipes his mouth, stands up, and tells the guy they can go. They walk side by side down the busy food street, the night breeze smelling like street food. But the doctor carries a faint scent of hospital disinfectant mixed with clean laundry soap. Honestly, he always hated hospital smells. But tonight, on this specific guy, he actually finds it kind of comforting. Eventually, curiosity wins, and he asks the doctor what brings him all the way out here. After a brief pause, the doctor softly explains he was visiting a friend and just happened to pass by. Our boy just nods as they finally reach the end of the street. Seeing the heavy traffic, the doctor pulls out his phone, but our guy instantly offers a ride. He mentions his car, making the doctor look up with pure surprise in his eyes. The doctor looks a bit unsure and quickly says there is no need to trouble him. A taxi is fine, the doctor says, but our boy insists on driving. He claims it's on the way, despite having zero clue where the doctor actually lives, earning a complicated look. Like he's trying to read our boy's mind, the doctor finally gives a soft nod. Whispering a quiet thank you, the walk to the parking lot goes completely silent again. Now our boy is low-key regretting his impulsive decision. Why did he even offer this ride? Hanging out like this is so awkward, but the offer is already out there. No going back. He unlocks his average SUV. The inside is a complete mess, cluttered with work papers and random junk. Feeling super embarrassed, he quickly clears off the passenger seat, apologizing for the clutter. The doctor tells him not to worry about it, silently stepping into the car. But as he reaches for the seatbelt, his fingers accidentally brush against our boy's hand. It's just a tiny touch, but they both pull back instantly. Classic webtoon chemistry right there. An incredibly tense atmosphere fills the vehicle as our guy finally starts up the engine. Cranking up the AC, he asks for the address. The doctor names a quiet neighborhood that is not too far from the hospital. Honestly, it is totally out of his way, but she sets the GPS anyway. As they merge into traffic, the silence inside the car starts feeling heavy. Soft music drifts from the radio, but it does absolutely nothing to ease the tension. This whole situation is so awkward, so she sneaks a quick glance at him through the rearview mirror. He is just staring out the window as the neon city lights wash over him. The passing shadows make it totally impossible to read his expression, and she hesitates before opening her mouth. At that exact second, he speaks up at the same time, making them both freeze completely mid-sentence. "Go ahead," she whispers softly. Shen Zhiheng turns his head back to look straight ahead. "It is nothing," he says calmly. "Just wanted to see if you've been busy with work." "Same old," she replies, before asking if the ER has been super stressful for him. He just flatly replies that he is used to it, bringing back that heavy silence. Honestly, the tension is killing me, and Gu Linzhou knows she has to break the ice. There are things she has been holding in forever, so she calls out his full name, Shen Zhiheng. His body visibly tenses up for a split second before he turns to look at her and replies. She keeps her eyes on the road, her palms starting to sweat against the steering wheel. "Thank you for visiting me in the hospital that day," she says softly, but he calmly tells her it was nothing. She hesitates for a moment, gently stressing that she does not just mean the hospital visit. She knows ER doctors do not normally walk all the way to a general ward. Just to check on a patient they already handed off, Shen Zhiheng stays quiet. He just quietly watches her, waiting for her to continue as she nervously licks her dry lips to find the words. She asks why he has been working himself to death lately, making him look back out the window to avoid her. "It's nothing," he mutters softly. He just wanted to keep himself busy. "Is it because you were trying to distract yourself?" she asks, and he goes completely silent. The silence stretches so long, she thinks he will never answer, until he finally whispers a quiet, "Maybe." Those simple words hit her like a heavy stone, dropping straight into the quiet lake of her heart and sending massive ripples through her soul. At this point, she finally pulls over right in front of his apartment gate. He clicks his seatbelt off, but makes zero move to actually get out of the car. For the very first time since they reunited, he calls her by her full name, Gu Linzhou. Her chest tightens as she softly replies, and he slowly turns to face her. The warm yellow glow of the streetlights spills through the glass, catching his eyes. All of the usual cold, distant barriers in his eyes are completely gone, replaced by a storm of raw emotion. He looked so incredibly exhausted, battling with some deep, painful struggle. There is this heartbreaking vulnerability in his eyes as he finally opens his mouth. He speaks so slowly, asking her if she genuinely believes they only broke up back then because they were not right for each other. Oh, no shot he actually went there. She definitely did not see that coming in a moment like this. Her heart does a complete painful flip, her knuckles turning white as she grips the steering wheel. She tries to say something, but the words completely die in her throat. Was it really just because they were incompatible? On the surface, yes, it definitely looked that way. Their personalities, their plans for the future, and their mental states were completely out of sync. But looking back, was it really just her own immaturity and failure to cherish what they had? Or maybe his stubborn pride, or the simple fact that they were both just too young? They did not know how to love someone back then. For 4 whole years, those questions constantly haunted her. She occasionally thought about them, but never got answers. She figured he moved on long ago. Why would he even dwell on ancient history like this? Yet his look right now says he never forgot. Gu Linzhou can tell that Shen Zhiheng cares too. He wants answers. But in the end, he just gives this brutally honest but totally useless answer. He doesn't know. Asked what he thinks, Shen Zhiheng just looks down. His long eyelashes cast a shadow in the dim light as he softly admits that he doesn't know either. Sometimes it feels right, other times, complete opposite. He finally looks up at Gu Linzhou with so much confusion and pain in his eyes. Softly, he whispers that back then, they both tried so hard in their own ways. It was all misplaced effort. Honestly, this part low-key breaks your heart. They wasted so much energy in the wrong places. Gu Linzhou wanted to give him the world, but completely ignored what Shen Zhiheng actually needed. And Shen Zhiheng kept forcing a future he thought was right without ever asking if Gu Linzhou wanted it. Talk about a classic hedgehog dilemma. They just wanted warmth. But they just kept hurting each other until Gu Linzhou finally whispers a soft apology. It is 4 years late. Apologizing for his immaturity and for all those toxic things he said when they broke up. Shen Zhiheng freezes before letting out this incredibly bitter, sad little smile. He asks what the point is of saying all this now, and honestly, he is right. What is the point? Time cannot be reversed. Shen Zhiheng takes a deep breath, steeling himself, and says he has finally reached his stop. He thanks him for the ride, pushes the door open, and steps out into the night. Still, he stands outside the door, hesitating to shut it. As the wind blows through his hair, he looks back and calls out Gu Linzhou's name one last time. Move on. He walks straight through the gates of his apartment complex without looking back even once. Gu Linzhou just sits in his car, watching that familiar figure fade away into the shadows. Those words just loop in his head. Is this really their final farewell to a love story that just slowly faded away? He feels completely hollow inside. It feels like a piece of him was permanently ripped away, but at the exact same time, there is a strange, quiet sense of relief as he leans back. He lets out a heavy sigh because deep down, he knows Shen Zhiheng is absolutely right. Time to move on. After that night, Gu Linzhou actively tries to avoid any place where he might cross paths with Shen Zhiheng. Like near that hospital or even their old favorite food street. Slowly, life actually starts getting back on track. Just work, home, and hanging out with friends. Old wounds are finally healed over. The scars are beginning to fade. Pain disappears, leaving only a faint mark of what once was. Gu Linzhou thought their story was completely over. But then, a little over 1 month later, a massive plot twist hits. His company lands a brand new project to develop a custom medical database system. They need to collaborate directly with a partner hospital, and the manager hands him the assignment. But the moment Gu Linzhou looks at the name of the hospital, he completely freezes. It is the exact hospital where Shen Zhiheng works. Emergency room. Talk about an absolute cliffhanger. Talk about a cruel twist of fate. The project manager looks at our guy, Gu Linzhou, and tells him to lead this project because his skills are top tier. Plus, he has already worked with hospital clients, making him the perfect fit. Gu Linzhou hesitates, desperately trying to find an excuse to decline. But nothing comes to mind, and honestly, this is way too massive of an opportunity. So he bites the bullet and accepts, soon heading over to the hospital for their first meeting. He is scheduled to sit down with the heads of both IT and emergency departments. Arriving early to the conference room, Gu Linzhou is a total mess of mixed feelings. He is feeling super anxious, but deep down, there is also this tiny, unexplainable spark of anticipation. Then, the heavy glass door swings open, and the IT team arrives. They exchange some quick pleasantries before the emergency department staff finally walks in. Leading the way is the ER director, a highly capable female doctor in her 50s. And walking right behind her is a younger doctor wearing a spotless white lab coat. He is carrying a laptop, and the moment Gu Linzhou looks up and registers his face, his breath catches. It is Shen Zhiheng. Shen Zhiheng spots him too, and his footsteps instantly falter right at the door. Pure shock flashes in the doctor's eyes. He clearly did not expect our guy here. The director smiles and introduces him as their brilliant ER star, Dr. Shen. She mentions he is incredibly skilled and knows their system workflows inside out. Because of that, he will be the main contact handling the tech requirements. Then she turns to introduce Gu Linzhou's team as the developers from the software company, specifically pointing out Gu Linzhou as the project lead. He stands up immediately. Forcing himself to act professional, he reaches out his hand, saying, "Hello, Dr. Shen." We meet again, but Shen Zhiheng just stares blankly at his outstretched hand, hesitating for a full second before lightly shaking it. Talk about intense silence. He softly says hello, Engineer Gu, dropping any trace of personal closeness, choosing a cold, distant title instead of his actual name. And with that, the meeting starts. They jump straight into discussing current system glitches and what the new upgrade needs. Shen Zhiheng locks in immediately, speaking with absolute logic and razor-sharp clarity. His voice is calm as he systematically points out major flaws in the current software. He details outdated workflows that desperately need to be redesigned from scratch. Sharp, quiet, and hyper-efficient. He is the absolute picture of a model doctor. Gu Linzhou simply listens and takes notes, interjecting with technical questions only, keeping their entire exchange strictly about business. There is zero personal tension, as if those cozy late-night talks never actually happened. Just a completely clean slate. The meeting drags on for well over an hour. When they wrap up and schedule the next session, the ER director heads out first. As Shen Zhiheng packs up his files, Gu Linzhou musters the courage to walk over. He asks if they can stay in touch regarding some complicated system details later. The doctor looks up, giving him a perfectly polite yet totally detached nod, saying they can connect any time since his email and phone number are in the directory. Gu Linzhou agrees, and the doctor immediately walks out without another word. He does not even spare him a second glance, leaving our guy staring at his back. Honestly, it kinda hurts, but maybe keeping things strictly professional is for the best. It will definitely make things easier on both of them as the project begins. Constant hospital runs shadowing ER doctors. This means studying their workflow, which inevitably leads to non-stop interactions with Shen Zhiheng. To be fair, he is an amazing point of contact, super professional. He answers everything, but draws a major line. Not a single word outside of work, even when they pass by in the hallway. Just a quick nod. It is like she is just a random engineer. Honestly, she thought this boundary was fine at first. But over time, that suffocating feeling starts creeping back in. Especially when she sees his face looking totally exhausted from back-to-back shifts. And seeing him act so warm to patients but turn cold on her, honestly, that is low-key heartbreaking. It naturally grinds her nerves. One afternoon, she waits in the ER office, waiting for its surgery. Waiting almost an entire hour just to discuss a design module is exhausting. He looks completely pale and ready to collapse. Seeing her there, he forces himself to snap out of it. Apologizing quickly, he explains there was an emergency rescue. He apologizes for keeping her waiting, but she immediately tells him it is totally fine. "You look terrible," she says. "Do you need to rest first?" He just shakes his head, grabbing his cup to take a huge, desperate gulp of water. "No need," he insists. "Let us hurry up." He demands to know which module they are discussing so they can get right to work. Midway through, he freezes, pressing his temples, his brows tightly furrowed. She asks if he is okay, but he pushes through, claiming it is just a mild headache. "It is fine. Let us continue," he says, but she cannot stand looking at him like this. Her frustration melts into pure worry as she puts her papers down. "Look, Shen Zhiheng," she says firmly. "Work is never ending, but if you keep pushing like this, your body is going to give out." He looks up, stunned. It is obvious he did not expect her to speak to him in that tone. Other doctors and nurses in the office turn around, instantly getting curious. His cheeks flush, whether from embarrassment or anger. "This is my job," he replies coldly. "I know my limits." Is knowing your limits pushing yourself until you can barely stand? She actually snaps back, and honestly, she is so real for that. He bites his lip, his eyes showing a mix of stubbornness and hurt. "Engineer Gu, we are discussing work right now," he says flatly. "My health is none of your business." She wants to argue, but he cuts her off. Already, he looks back down.
Let us continue, he says calmly. We need to clarify this field logic.
Though his voice is steady, his knuckles turn white as he grips his mouse. Pushing him further will only make him withdraw even more, so she forces herself to swallow her frustration. She refocuses on the screen, but the atmosphere has turned ice cold. The rest of the meeting is strictly business. Both just want it over with. Finally wrapping things up, she shuts her laptop. Let us call it a day, she suggests. I will make the edits back at the office. Shen Zhiheng stands up, making it pretty clear that the meeting is over. He barely says a word as Gu Linzhou walks to the door. Stopping at the exit, Gu Linzhou looks back. Shen Zhiheng is still there. Looking so fragile under those harsh white lights, Gu Linzhou softens his voice. He softly tells Shen Zhiheng to take care of himself. No response. Shen Zhiheng keeps his back turned, his shoulders barely flinching. Gu Linzhou sighs and heads out to wait for the elevator. His head is a total mess right now. He wants to keep his distance. Yet he cannot stop caring, even after telling himself to move on. Every little move Shen Zhiheng makes still drives him crazy. Honestly, he is hopeless. The elevator doors slide open. Just as he steps forward, someone calls his name from behind. It is a nurse from the emergency room. She looks kind of familiar. Gu Linzhou asks if everything is okay. The nurse jogs over, holding a heavy folder in her hands. She explains that Dr. Shen wanted her to hand over a missed reference document. Gu Linzhou takes the folder with a quick thanks, but she lingers. Hesitating for a second, she softly says it is no problem. Then she asks him not to mind Dr. Shen being so cold today. Gu Linzhou asks what is wrong, and the nurse lowers her voice. Apparently his family called earlier, pressuring him about another blind date. The conversation was pretty brutal, and Dr. Shen actually looked close to tears. Right after that, a massive emergency came in, keeping him busy until now. Realizing she might have overshared, she quickly says she is just gossiping. She tells him to ignore it and runs back to work. As she scurries off, Gu Linzhou stands there holding the files. His chest tightens, the blind dates, the family drama. So that explains the cold shoulder. This is low-key heartbreaking, guys. The elevator doors open again, and passengers stare at him weirdly. Snapping back to reality, he finally steps inside. Staring at his blurry reflection in the metal walls as it descends, he suddenly realizes he never really understood the sheer amount of pressure Shen Zhiheng carried over the last 4 years. After that, their work chats slowly go back to being strictly professional. But everything has changed. Gu Linzhou cannot just treat him like an ordinary doctor. He constantly checks to see if Shen Zhiheng is working too late. He keeps an eye on his health and subtly orders his favorite foods. Shen Zhiheng always eats it silently, without a word. Gu Linzhou pours him warm water during breaks, keeping things gentle. Slowly, the cold silence melts into a quiet thank you. Progress is solid, but that is as far as they go. Soon, the software needs user testing, and the hospital staff must help. Naturally, Shen Zhiheng is chosen to lead the emergency room test group. They schedule it for the weekend so the hospital is less crowded. It prevents any disruption to the crazy emergency room workflow. Gu Linzhou arrives early at the IT lab and Shen Zhiheng is right on time. She shows up in simple, casual clothes, looking pretty well rested. The two of them sit at the computer testing every single function. Honestly, it is super tedious work that takes an insane amount of patience. But our guy is locked in, carefully clicking every single button. As they log the bugs, they finally start talking. There is this rare, peaceful vibe between them during their small debates. When lunchtime hits, they just order takeout and eat in the server room. Eating together naturally leads to some casual talk outside of work. She tries breaking the ice, saying this new system should lighten his workload. He takes a small bite, quietly whispering that he hopes so. All the repetitive data entry they do now is pretty inefficient anyway. She reassures him things will get better, and he gives a soft nod. They eat in silence for a moment before she hesitates. She finally asks if he's doing okay, and his hand freezes mid-bite. He recovers, claiming it is just the same old routine. She mentions his dark circles look a bit lighter, and he agrees. Silence falls again, and she just looks down at her food. But then, he quietly tells her she should take care too. He warns her not to stay too late, leaving her completely stunned. He avoids her gaze, intensely focusing on the rice in his bowl. Look at that! His ears are low-key turning red. This is literally the first time since she returned that he has shown any personal concern outside of work, even if it is subtle. But for her, it is like walking in the pitch black. And suddenly seeing a tiny speck of light, her heart melts. She quietly promises she will, and they dive back into the testing. Eventually, they hit a complex reporting module, and a bug pops up. The data is totally mismatched, so she spends ages debugging the code. It turns out to be a logic error requiring a full redeployment.
Since this is going to take quite a while, she feels
pretty bad and suggests he take a quick break. But he just shakes his head, calmly telling her it is fine. He promises to wait, leaning back in his chair to check his phone. She locks in to fix the code, and the room goes silent. There is only the sound of her typing and his occasional phone scrolls. Sunlight streams through the window, painting warm shadows across the floor. Honestly, time feels like it is slowing down, giving her this wild illusion. It is like they are back in college, studying together in the library. He would read while she coded, totally quiet yet deeply connected. That long-lost feeling of pure peace slowly fills the room. Finally, the deployment finishes and she lets out a relieved sigh. She tells him it is ready, and he sits right up. He runs the test again, and this time the data is perfect. Looking at the successful report, a tiny, rare smile crosses his face. It is incredibly faint, but he is clearly relieved. It vanishes quickly, but that single second hits our lead right in the feels. Just seeing that rare smile makes him realize something. Every single hour of brutal overtime was totally worth it. Finally, the test wraps up. It is almost 5 p.m. as they pack up their gear to head out. Stepping out of the hospital, they are met with a beautiful sunset. Looking at the glow, our lead tells Dr. Shen he worked hard, and Shen quietly says the same back.
standing by the curb, they fall right back into that familiar, subtle tension.
Neither of them says goodbye, and neither makes a move to leave. They seem to be waiting for each other to speak, until our lead breaks the ice. He tentatively asks if Shen is free tonight and wants to grab some dinner. His heart is pounding fast. Dr. Shen looks up, a clear flicker of hesitation in his eyes. A bit of a struggle there, and the evening breeze gently lifts his long hair. Shen stays silent. The suspense is actually killing me right now. But then, Shen softly says yes. Since neither drove, they find a quiet Cantonese spot right around the corner. It is still early, so the place is mostly empty, but ordering food gets pretty awkward. Our lead instinctively orders the steamed chicken and greens Shen used to love back then. Shen gives him a look, says absolutely nothing, and just adds a rib soup to the slip. The tension is still thick while they wait, so our lead starts pouring some tea. Their fingers accidentally brush, and this time, Shen does not pull away. His eyelashes just flutter. Our lead quickly brings up the successful system test, desperate to keep the conversation going. Holding his teacup, Shen softly asks if they even need his help anymore. He praises their professionalism, and our lead just laughs it off as a way to make a living. The food arrives. They eat mostly in silence, but the heavy awkwardness is gone. Seeing him still take those same small bites makes our lead feel completely lost in time. It is like a complete flashback, and my heart is honestly aching for them. Asking how Shen's mother is doing makes the doctor's chopsticks pause mid-air. But he quickly recovers, saying his mom still worries about him. Our lead softly agrees that parents are just like that. Shen just hums. Not wanting to dive into family drama, our lead just drops the subject. Dinner finishes, night falls. Walking him home feels much better than driving, so they go slowly. The summer night breeze feels absolutely amazing as the two of them walk side by side. Keeping a perfect, slightly painful distance between them, Shen suddenly breaks the silence. Shen asks if our lead remembers how they used to wander the streets back in college. His heart skips a beat. He says he remembers walking him back from the library and always taking the long way. Shen lets out a soft, melancholic laugh, recalling how short those roads felt back then. Just a few steps and they were there. Our lead quietly asks how he feels about those roads now. But before Shen can answer, he stops walking. They have already reached his apartment. Linzhou says he is home, and Shen softly hums. Still, he just stands at the door, not entering right away. The warm streetlight glows against his face, making him look incredibly soft. Linzhou thanks him for the dinner, and Shen softly replies that he is welcome. Shen looks at him with this super complicated expression, like there is something he desperately wants to say. But he holds it back, only whispering for Linzhou to get home safe. He turns and heads inside, but once he reaches the corner of the building, he stops to look back at Linzhou one last time. Talk about a slow burn. That warm, fluttering feeling is back. But there is no time to overthink, because the final launch week is absolute chaos. With endless system bugs and adjustments, Linzhou basically lives in the hospital IT department.
Dr. Shen is swamped too, but he still drops by whenever he can just to check on things.
And honestly, they are starting to talk way more now, and not just about work. They actually joke around, like when Shen complains about some terribly designed hospital system. Or when Linzhou rants about the doctors demanding impossible features. They are totally giving battle comrades right now. One night, they are stuck late again, but they finally crush a massive bug. Linzhou lets out a huge sigh of relief, only to look up and see Shen leaning against the doorframe. He is holding 2 cups of coffee. Linzhou is shocked and asks why he is still here. Shen walks in, saying he just finished up and noticed Linzhou's light was still on. He hands over a warm cup and speaks softly. He tells him to make do since it is just from the hospital vending machine. Linzhou thanks him and takes it, while Shen pulls up a chair to sit beside him. Sipping their drinks, the server room falls into a deep, cozy silence, with just the two of them. It is incredibly quiet. Shen gently asks if he is almost done. Linzhou nods and says, yeah, they are basically there. They are just waiting to go live. He admits he just hopes nothing else goes wrong. Shen sighs softly, but Linzhou assures him that everything is going to be fine. After a brief silence, Shen suddenly looks at him and calls out his name. He tells him that he has really changed a lot. Shen stares down at his coffee cup, admitting he cannot quite put it into words. He looks thoughtful, adding that Linzhou does not seem as restless or impatient as before. Like he is finally grounded. Linzhou just gives him a soft smile. He tells Shen that everyone has to grow up eventually, and that Shen has changed too. Shen raises an eyebrow, asking if it is for better or worse. Linzhou says he has just become more like Dr. Shen. Hearing that sincere answer, the doctor completely freezes up. But then, he actually lets out a real smile. For the first time since they met again, it is not just a polite smirk. It is genuine. His eyes crinkle up so beautifully that Linzhou's heart literally skips a beat. The chemistry here is unmatched. Staring straight ahead, Shen softly asks if he knows something. He admits he was completely shocked the day Linzhou first showed up at the hospital. Linzhou confesses he was too. He honestly confesses that back then he could not help but wonder what was happening. Was it just a cruel twist of fate? Shen mutters. Linzhou quickly asks if he still feels that way now. Shen avoids his gaze, his fingers just nervously tracing the rim of his cup. He softly admits he does not know, but thinks maybe it is something else entirely. His eyes look a little dazed, making Linzhou's heart completely flutter. Realizing how late it is, Shen stands up and says they should get going. Shen softly offers to walk him home, and this time they walk side by side. Walking together, their shoulders lightly brush every few steps, but neither of them pulls away. When they reach Zhiheng's apartment, he doesn't say goodbye right away. Instead, Zhiheng softly promises to be there on launch day, and Linzhou nods in agreement. Linzhou tells him to hang in there, while Zhiheng offers his own quiet encouragement. You too, Linzhou says with a smile, as Zhiheng finally turns to head upstairs. Linzhou stands there watching the hallway lights turn on floor by floor, only leaving once the top level lights up. Linzhou feels lighter than he has in months, but the peace vanishes when launch day arrives. It is absolute chaos in the hospital, but surprisingly, things run way smoother than expected. Over in the ER, Shen Zhiheng is on the floor monitoring everything and tackling minor hiccups. Meanwhile, Linzhou manages technical support from the server room, tracking progress through his walkie-talkie. Zhiheng's calm voice crackles over the radio, calling out a broken printer in clinic number 3. Go check on it, he instructs calmly, before warning another staff member about a wrong system path. Just press F1 for the help prompt, Zhiheng continues to direct. If patient data loads slowly, try clearing the system cache. His systematic leadership keeps the chaos at bay, and by afternoon, the system finally stabilizes. As Linzhou runs the final server checks, Zhiheng's exhausted voice filters through the receiver.
The server side is all clear for now, Linzhou replies.
Leaving the server room, he decides to head down to the ER to check on him. But the moment he reaches the entrance, a sudden panic erupts inside as an emergency patient arrives. Voices scream for the critical care pathway as nurses rush in, pushing a gurney at full speed. On it lies an elderly man, his face dangerously pale and turning blue. Zhiheng immediately springs into action, starting a rapid assessment while shouting orders for heart monitoring. Get an IV line started and prep the defibrillator right now. His rapid-fire commands fill the room, and the tension instantly skyrockets. Linzhou watches from the corner, and honestly, seeing the doc in his element is pure main character energy. Yet sweat beads on his forehead as the high-stakes rescue stretches on for over 30 minutes. Thankfully, they stabilize the elderly man's vitals just in time before wheeling him off to the ICU. Zhiheng pulls off his mask, letting out a heavy, long sigh as he slumps against the wall. He looks completely drained, so Linzhou walks over and hands him a bottle of water. Zhiheng accepts it with a silent nod, tilting his head back to take a few desperate gulps. Sweat clings to his damp hair as Linzhou gently asks him if he is doing okay.
Zhiheng nods, then shakes his head, admitting that every time he is in this position,
He always feels like he could have done just a little bit better. There is raw self-blame in his voice, but Linzhou quickly reassures him that he did amazing. Zhiheng looks up at him, sensing the absolute sincerity in those words. His eyes are bloodshot from sheer exhaustion, yet they shine as he mentions the system's huge help. Accessing patient records was incredibly fast today, Zhiheng adds, looking directly at Linzhou. Seeing the genuine approval in the doctor's eyes, Linzhou lets out a quiet sigh of relief. After a brief silence, Zhiheng suddenly looks up and calls out Linzhou's full name. He asks him to grab dinner because he is absolutely starving to death. Linzhou freezes in surprise before cracking a warm smile. And yes, we are finally getting that dinner date. Zhiheng answers without a second thought, demanding something incredibly spicy. So they head out together to find some proper comfort food. They wind up at a Szechuan joint in the back alley, ordering boiled spicy fish. The table is soon filled with fiery red dishes to make up for a completely draining day. He chuckles and says she needs some nourishment, his voice carrying a rare, lively playfulness as the food arrives. Honestly, he is absolutely devouring it, with tiny sweat beads popping up on his nose. He completely loses that polished, elite look he usually has, and she finds this side of him so incredibly real. It is honestly so adorable. She tells him to slow down and hands him a tissue. She reminds him to wipe his sweat, but he looks at her with total confusion, asking why she isn't eating. It is not that spicy. Eat up! She quickly picks up some food. It is actually spicy as hell, but so satisfying as they chat and eat. He mostly talks about the hilarious things that happened during the system go-live today. Like which senior doctor couldn't use a mouse, or which nurse forgot her password 3 times. He mimics them so perfectly that she can't even stop laughing. It feels like they are right back in college, back when he used to rant about their insane anatomy classes. Suddenly, he looks up and says, "Thank you for today." She's confused. Thank her for what? For a lot of things, he says, putting down his chopsticks. He looks her dead in the eye, saying every word with complete sincerity. Thank you for your system. Thank you for the water, and thank you for this meal. Looking at his face all flushed and red from the spice, her heart absolutely skips a beat. Before she can even finish saying Shen Zhiheng, we are not done talking.
His phone starts ringing and his brows instantly furrow the second he looks at the screen.
The screen goes dark. Why aren't you picking up? She asks softly. It is nothing, just a spam call, he says, grabbing his water cup. His eyes are totally dodging hers as he explains, but then, boom, the phone rings again. Annoyed, he is about to decline it again, but she gently stops his hand, telling him to just take it. What if it is an emergency? She gently keeps her hand over his. She softly urges him. He glances up at her. He hesitates for a second, then finally picks up. Hey, Mom? Yeah, I'm eating. I know. I get it, okay? I have things to do here, his voice sounding pretty rushed and tense. He hangs up with clear irritation, taking a deep, heavy breath. He tosses the phone onto the table. Pressuring you to go on a blind date?
She asks, testing the waters. He doesn't even deny it.
He pokes at his rice, mumbling that apparently there is some rich overseas graduate with an amazing background.
And she is forcing him to meet her tomorrow. Hearing this, our girl's heart instantly sinks. No shot.
Are you going?
She asks softly. Do you want me to go? He counters.
He looks up, throwing the question right back at her with this incredibly complicated look in his eyes. The question completely catches her off guard, and the private dining room goes dead silent. This tension is actually insane. The only sound is the low hum of the AC. She can literally hear her own heart pounding in her chest. This question is like a massive trigger, unlocking all these feelings they've both been holding back. Looking into his eyes, she can see so much tension. There is hope, and even a tiny, fragile hint of vulnerability. She knows her answer changes everything.
For him, for her, and for whatever they are. She takes a deep breath.
And she finally gives him a firm, quiet answer. Honestly, the absolute perfect response.
But it is crystal clear. He stares at her. His eyes widen slightly, and then slowly, a soft smile starts spreading across his face. Not just some polite smirk, but a real, genuine smile radiating straight from his eyes. A smile that literally lights up his whole face. He mutters, looking down to poke at his rice again. His ears turn red. He softly murmurs that they don't have to go. It's like he is talking to himself, but the heavy weight in Gu Linzhou's chest finally lifts.
Instant butterflies.
The two of them eat in complete silence, not a single word. But the air is sweet and spicy.
After dinner, they walk along the river under the amazing evening breeze.
Their hands keep brushing against each other, once, twice, and by the third time,
Gu Linzhou does not let him slip away. He gently takes his hand. A slight flinch. His fingers are a bit cold, so Gu Linzhou holds on even tighter. Still silent, they just hold hands and walk. The streetlights stretch their shadows, like all past regrets are being ironed out.
Shen Zhiheng softly calls out Gu Linzhou's name, and our boy just hums.
Gu Linzhou stops and asks what they are.
Shen Zhiheng looks up at him with those sparkling, star-like eyes.
Gu Linzhou suggests they start over.
Complete silence, just staring.
Gu Linzhou seriously admits he made a ton of mistakes in the past.
He knows 4 years is a long time and that they have both changed.
But squeezing his hand, some things never change.
Shen Zhiheng curiously asks, like what? And Gu Linzhou looks right into his eyes.
He tells him he still can't help caring and wanting him to be happy. Saying he still thinks he is the most handsome makes Shen Zhiheng instantly blush and try to pull away. Gu Linzhou holds on tight and solemnly calls out Shen Zhiheng's full name. He softly asks Shen Zhiheng to give him one more chance.
To make up for the past? No way.
He wants to build a brand new future for the two of them, leaving Shen Zhiheng speechless. Shen Zhiheng stares down at their hands for so long, Gu Linzhou almost thinks he will get rejected. When he finally looks up, his eyes are teary, but he is actually smiling. With a slight sniffle, Shen Zhiheng warns him that he is not allowed to give up halfway this time.
He promises he won't.
Shen Zhiheng stiffens for a second before completely relaxing into his arms. That mix of fresh shampoo and faint hospital scent is low-key comforting. Peaceful, quiet warmth. It literally feels like they have the whole world as he walks him back home. But just as Shen Zhiheng turns around to walk up those stairs, Gu Linzhou quickly grabs his hand. He looks at Dr. Shen and asks if he's free for a movie tomorrow. Shen Zhiheng smiles, eyes curving like crescents, asking if this is some kind of trap.
Gu Linzhou laughs and admits it, asking him to just give him a shot.
Then boom! Shen Zhiheng stands on his tiptoes and plants a quick kiss on his cheek. He runs inside and happily yells for him to see him tomorrow. Gu Linzhou touches his cheek. Honestly, he just stands there like an idiot, totally bubbling with sweetness. On the walk back, he immediately texts his buddy Dezhou. He drops the bomb that it is done, and Dezhou replies with instant shock. Gu smugly replies to his ex, "Yep, she is officially his girlfriend again."
His buddy Dazhou absolutely loses it, screaming that he is buying dinner tonight.
He just laughs and pockets his phone. Looking out at the gorgeous city lights, he realized everything was finally falling into place.